The Walking Dead Season 6 premiere, first time again. Now, I think this season, the trailer definitely kind of played up the idea of one character versus another. Kind of the old versus new sort of thing, because we have Rick, who's obviously our main character, who, he's gone through this journey and he's become a bit of a different character, to say the least. I think he's a bit of a different character. And then we have Morgan, who comes back, and he's kind of the new character, and even he changed from the last two times we saw him, from the beginning of the series to the last season, or season before, I guess, to now, like these past two seasons, where he had our glimpses of him last time, of course, but now he's with the group, he's doing his thing, and we see the difference between these characters, and we see the connection that they had and the connection they have now, and it's very interesting. It plays off being the main focus, which I kind of enjoy. I like the way they played it, where that was the main focus, but there is so much stuff in this episode, because there are a lot of relationship things that happened in the finale and like the last two episodes of last season that really affect this season right now. We have the stuff with Glenn, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like, that was one of my favorite things, because even the scene where he was kind of in the background, and it's Maggie talking about how he just helps people even when they don't really deserve it. That was a pretty cool scene, and we had his bond, or I shouldn't say bond, but we had his relationship with this guy that got Noah killed, tried to kill him, and he spared his life. He totally could have killed him, and they had the preview or the recap for that from the last season. He could have done that, but he let him live, and he's trying to help him, and we get like our flashbacks for, I don't know, it had to have been at least maybe 3 weeks, starting from the finale of the last season to the actual present timeline. But I like how they did it. It was kind of cool going through all this time. It's like it starts right there, and we have the black and white stuff, which personally I would have preferred if it was all in color, because it just would have been cooler that way to see everything, but it didn't bother me that much. So we had some pretty crazy moments, and just starting from the beginning, it's like, okay, Morgan came in, he saw what happened, and a little bit of time, they have Morgan sort of locked up. That, I'm guessing, like, it was a weird thing. Like, they didn't specifically say it, but I'm assuming he was just locked up in a garage or wherever the heck he was. I don't even know. But in that random room or whatever, and they have their weird little moment where Rick's, I don't know what was in his mind. I mean, I know, as he put it, he doesn't take chances, but it would seem kind of weird to me, like, oh, he thinks Morgan, of all people, who admittedly did kind of go a little crazy. I mean, he had the chance to go back with them, and he was like, nah, instead I'm going to stay here in this abandoned city by myself. So it was a little bit of a crazy thing. You would have to, I guess, take that into consideration. Like, he could be a little bit insane, because he stayed in an abandoned city by himself, killing off zombies and, setting up traps and weird stuff like that. But we have that little moment where Rick asks him, like, oh, how did you learn that? And then he's like, okay, did you learn it from a friend before or after? And then it was like a weird little moment, because he didn't answer. Morgan didn't answer him, and it was just like, this is a weird amount of tension. And then that was kind of it. Assuming that was the only bit of tension until the very end of the episode, when we go through all this stuff, and Rick has to deal with this guy who, it seems simple. It was like, okay, we know, based on the trailer, you could tell that Rick was pushing these people. I didn't expect it to all be this one episode where they're literally dealing with hundreds of zombies, because they're all falling into like this ravine. I didn't know it was going to be that. I figured they were just taking people out on like supply runs and stuff when they weren't ready. And then it's like, okay, seeing the trailer was one thing. And even then I knew, I was like, if this guy is saying they aren't ready, even from the trailer, I knew Rick was pushing things too far. And then actually seeing it, I was like, holy crap, he's really pushing it. And the first thing I thought was, this is a terrible idea, Rick. Like, when I first saw what they were planning, I was like, this is a horrible idea, and this isn't going to go well. And for all intents and purposes, it did until the very end, and I don't know if that's going to be the Wolves or if that's going to be someone else. I would assume it's the Wolves, but I don't know. Like, the whole thing happens, and then we go through all this stuff with this guy through the flashbacks, and he's like, all right, I just want I need to know exactly what the plan is. And it made sense. I didn't have any issue with the guy at all until the scene with Eugene. Then I had a bit of an issue with him. And I was surprised he lived through that. Because I was like, okay, I don't know. The thing that really freaked me out was that Eugene wasn't in the present stuff. He wasn't on the mission. So I was like, I don't know if he kills him right now, which would have been crazy. And then the door just swings open and it's like, oh, what's going on? And it was just a crazy scene. I was like, how did Rick not just blow this guy away? But of course, whenever Daryl's there, he can kind of calmly just be like, Rick, and then Rick calms down. So that was a crazy scene. And then we had the stuff with him and Morgan, and that I loved. And of course, that happens right after the guy gets bit. Or I think it was right before he gets bit. So it's like he has this stuff. He's like, all I wanted to do was kill the guy because I just wanted it to be easier. Because I knew that, I didn't want to have to worry about what stupid thing he's going to do next. Because no matter what, this is the type of person that's going to die. And that's exactly what happens. Like, they finally have the resolution where I was like, you know what, you were right, I was wrong. They had the handshake, and I was like, that's pretty cool. They worked through their differences, much like the stuff with Glenn. Although I'm kind of with Maggie, I still don't care about that guy. But totally different situation. He didn't get anybody killed. He just was really worried, like, can we just, instantly follow Rick? But, they have all that stuff. They have a resolution and everything. And he's like, all right, I'm going to take the front. He's taking charge. He's behind the plan. And it's like, oh, zombie. And it's just like bit in the face. And then we get an even crazier scene after that. Because him being eaten, I was like, that's not that big of a deal. It sucked because they had, like, even just in this one episode, a pretty interesting evolution between him and Rick. And then we get the stuff, and they didn't say anything about it, but there are two separate points. And the conversation right before the guy gets bit is when Rick says it back to Morgan, and it's like, you're the guy that I've always known. Like, this doesn't have to be the first time again. It's just like the first time, you are the same person, and I know you. And Morgan says that to Rick, and he was right during those flashbacks. And then when Rick stabbed the guy in the back of the head to stop him from screaming, the first thing that came to my mind was like, is he the same person now? Because of course Morgan was like totally, taken aback by that. And he said to Michonne that he knew, but I don't know. Like, I don't know. He's still like the pseudo pacifist, character at this point. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But that was pretty interesting. And even Michonne, I guess she's used to this stuff. She knows how Rick operates. And I think for quite some time it's going to be the three of them, which I'm actually excited for. Because it was always like Rick and Michonne. And it's like that in the comics. So it was kind of cool to see like Rick, Michonne, and Morgan as like the trio in this episode. And I kind of hope we get a lot more of that before whatever insanity happens. I don't know how long we're going to have Morgan. I know we're going to have Rick, so, nothing there. I'm assuming we're going to have Michonne for a long time. I don't know. They don't really care about who we love except for maybe Daryl. I think Daryl might be safe just because of the fandom. I don't know, but I like seeing them as a trio. That was actually kind of cool. And this sort of dynamic between, we have like this spectrum, and it's like Rick here, Morgan here, and then Michonne's kind of in the middle where she doesn't go as far as Rick because she's not in that sort of far-reaching position where she's gone through like some of the stuff Rick's gone through, like losing his wife and just having to kill his friend. It's all that craziness, and him being the leader and having these very specific burdens placed on him. So she's in the middle of that, and then Morgan's the guy who lost his son, and then after that it was kind of just like he just backed away from stuff and it didn't matter anymore. So they're all in, you have like the end, which is like the aggressive end, the pacifist end, and then like right in the middle where Michonne, obviously we know Michonne can be aggressive even without the stuff with the governor. We've seen Michonne aggressive, but you include that, I mean, she stabbed the dude in the eye, and just like when she broke that stuff off the fish tank, that was a pretty crazy scene. Like, she was like bleeding from her own hand. It was just boom. But they're this spectrum. They create like this crazy spectrum from really harsh to like really, like just pacifism in general. And we'll see how that plays out with Morgan, especially when the wolves do come into play. How he decides to operate after things continue, because I'm sure he's gonna run into those two guys that he didn't kill. I'd love to see him run into those two again, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't, you should have killed us before, and maybe this wouldn't have happened." And maybe that'll be during an episode where someone ends up getting killed because of those two characters specifically, and that might weigh on Morgan. And then, if Rick knows that, it's like you let these people live, and that led to someone else dying, someone good dying, compared to these two guys who, tried to rob you basically and set up the whole stuff with the car and everything, which I don't believe anyone ran into them. I think they were just at the gate towards the end of that episode um, when Daryl and the other guy got stuck in the car. I think they were just at the gate towards the end of that episode, so they didn't. No one else has seen them except for Morgan. But if he runs into him again, that might be something interesting. Like, oh, this person died because we killed him, and you totally could have killed us, and this never would have happened. But I like the trio. It should be interesting. Like, we had little moments, like just tiny videos, mostly of course Rick and Morgan in this, but Michonne had her little moments. Just like, even if it was a couple sentences, they're gonna build that up, and I'm looking forward to it. And it'll be interesting to see how close to the comics they do this, because Morgan is with them in Alexandria during the comics. I was looking at some stuff, mostly because we do get one of the characters from the comics, Heath. He came in this episode, which was really cool. As soon as he showed up, I was like, I know that guy. I couldn't remember his name, and I couldn't remember if he was in the exact same position as he was in the comics, but he basically is. So that was kind of cool. He looks almost exactly the same, like, and it's hard not to with that specific hairstyle. But it was cool to see him come in. I love the scene where he meets Eugene, and Eugene's like, it's good to see someone like me. Like, I appreciate the hairstyle. And he just looks at him, he's just like, okay. And he just walks off and says nothing to him. I like that. I like his character. He's almost like Glenn in a sense, where he's kind of sarcastic, like during the scene where they have to take on all the zombies. And Glenn asks, is he ready? He's like, no, but you're going to do this crazy crap anyway, so might as well just go ahead with it. So he's slightly sarcastic, but I like his character. It was cool to see him come into it. I know we're getting another character that I don't think they've really shown off just yet, but we're getting another character from the comics, so that's pretty cool. I don't know what's going to happen between Rick and the woman whose husband he killed. In the comics, they do actually end up having a bit of a relationship. I don't know if that's going to happen in this. It seems like it's fairly different, and the dynamic is different because I don't believe she had two kids in the comic books. I think she just has one young kid. So in this, it's pretty cool that he has this dynamic where he has to deal with her older son, who I honestly forgot was her son. I thought that kid was just somebody else's. And maybe they didn't say that. I'm sure they did, because it would be weird if they just randomly threw that in, like, oh, that's actually their kid. But I had no idea that he was their son, because they were never together, like, in the same scenes. And I don't remember them really playing that up when Carl went to the house. Or maybe he just met at someone else's house. It doesn't matter. But he has issues with Rick for very obvious reasons. And, Rick saves his life in this episode, which introduces us to the insane zombie quarry, pretty much. Which, and I should have mentioned this early on, when I first saw that, I thought for sure they were back in the beginning, not the beginning of the series, but I thought they were in the same location as the beginning of the series. I thought they, like, traveled back for whatever random reason. And I was like, are they, back at the quarry? But it was just another rock formation. It was totally different. But that was the first thing I saw. When I first saw that, I was like, oh, they're back, at the first location. And I thought that made sense because it was called First Time Again. And I was like, oh, they went back for whatever. Really, it would have been so weird if they did. But I was like, for some reason, they went back to the very first campsite. So it was like the first time all over again, because it's so different from when they first started. But it just looked the same. Maybe they did that on purpose, especially in conjunction with the episode title, just to make it seem that way. But that was the first thing I saw, first thing I thought when I saw the. I guess it's still a quarry. It's just a different quarry than the one that they were in. So he saves her, or he saves the boy. Then he gets slightly aggressive. He gets Rick on him, simply put. And so, of course, his mom has to talk to him like, hey, don't, talk to him that way. Don't touch him. And pretty much, if there's anything, any advice, period, or pretty much any dialogue, it can't be between you and my son because you killed his dad. It's not going to be like, oh, he's giving me some great advice to keep me alive. This is the dude that killed my dad and just like blew him away in front of everybody, which apparently affected Abraham, which I'll get to. I don't know what his deal is right now, but it was just an interesting dynamic, and it makes it seem like there's no way in the world that they're gonna end up together in the show like they do in the comics. But it'll be interesting to see. Who knows? Like, it might come down to they save each other at a certain point, and that's when they kind of just make it work. Maybe her son gets killed off, and this is really harsh, but that obstacle is out of the way for Rick. I don't know. But we'll see how it plays out. I don't think it's going to be like the comics. And even if it is, not exactly the best. So we'll see how all that stuff plays out. And then, like I said, the stuff with Abraham, I don't know what his deal is. I was trying to figure him out this whole episode. Like, either, at first it seemed like he was totally going crazy. Because, at first he was like getting drunk and it was like, okay, we got drunk. Like, that was a pretty big moment. Because, like, there's another dead person. So he was drinking, he got drunk. No big deal. He saw Sasha, he gives her the peace sign. Although technically he gave her the F you sign because he did it this way. And then we go through the episode and it's like, okay, they're in the car. And the scene where he gets out and distracts the zombies again and hops back in, he's like just laughing it up like, oh, I'm just living like you. And then he's talking about he thinks, sometimes he thinks he might have the guy's brain still in his ear and stuff. I'm like, what is going on with him? And then through the flashbacks, we kind of get a calmer version where he's trying to figure out where Sasha's at. And so now it's kind of like either he's actually going crazy or he's faking going crazy because he wants to show Sasha what it's really like to like lose it. Because of course she did at certain points in the last season. And she certainly has reason to after losing two people that were really important to her. So I think he's trying to go like beyond where she's at right now because she already reached those crazy points, and so now she's a little bit calmer, and I think he's worried that she's gonna go back and go even further than she did the last time, and so he's trying to show her like, oh, I'm gonna be super insane and be over the top too, even more than you could be, just to try to mess with her mind and keep her calm because he really thought she went on that mission to die, and that's why he went with her. And then he did all the crazy stuff, and I'm like, I don't know if that's 100% true, though. So I think it might be a bit, half and half, or probably more like 60-40, helping Sasha. But there is a part of him that kind of lost it a little bit, seeing that like right in front of him. And I don't know, maybe we'll get some more answers to it. I'm sure we will, but at this point it was just kind of interesting watching him. Like, okay, so it seems like he's crazy. And then when they did the flashback stuff, especially when it got to the very end when he asked her, like, are you doing this to die? And then that made me think about when he went out with the zombies and was like, oh, I'm just living like you are. Because all she said was no. She didn't say anything specific about, like, I'm doing this to live or anything. She just said no and walked away. So it was like that final flashback made me go back through. I'm like, now I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know, but he's acting crazy. Either way, he's definitely acting crazy. But I don't know if he's actually going nuts a little bit because of what he saw, or if he's just helping her. And I think more likely he's just helping her because he's seen people die a bunch in this show. Like, pretty much everyone has that's been with the main group. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's watching this guy die. But he did drink that very first night, and that had nothing to do with Sasha. So that's where it kind of gets me, like, maybe it is really like almost half and half. So I'm not sure, but I did enjoy it. It was definitely fun to watch that, trying to figure out what's going on with him just because this one guy died, and it wasn't someone he knew. It was just a crazy moment. Of course, there were like two people that died, and it was just a crazy situation all around, but it just didn't seem like something that would affect Abraham like that, because that's just his character, where he's like, all right, deal with this crap. As he put it, he said do it live, which I loved when he said that earlier in the episode, like in the very beginning. That was funny. But he's just that tough character, and it's just something I'm trying to figure out right now. I'm sure that obviously they did it on purpose, but I don't know where his mind is right now, and I'm just trying to figure it out. So I definitely want to know what you guys thought about it, because it was like, okay, he's totally going crazy, but he's also looking out for Sasha, and it's just like, not 100% sure it's really just for her. So it's, half and half. But either way, it was pretty cool to watch that. The whole mission itself was definitely pretty awesome. Like, I loved all of the craziness that went down. Them leading this big horde. Like I said, terrible plan. I thought from the very beginning, horrible idea. But they did have to do it. There was no other option for that. I didn't know what the plan was, of course, in the very beginning. Because I'm like, is his plan to just shoot like hundreds upon hundreds of zombies? The plan was much better than that. I still think it was. I mean, it worked, so I guess it wasn't a bad plan, but it just seemed like a terrible idea. Especially because they did have to push it ahead of time because the truck fell over, which ultimately did force them to go ahead with it, but it helped them a little bit, admittedly, because it had to have crushed a buttload of zombies. And I was surprised it didn't blow up. I know. I'm assuming it's just because all the trucks would have been siphoned of gas a long, long time ago. But I love the whole mission. Of course, how that led to certain characters interacting in very specific ways. Also loved the flashback scene where Rick was trying to get the people to fight back on their own. Second time I said that's a terrible idea, Rick. Definitely was. Way worse than in the beginning because they just had to push the plan they already had up a day. That was just him like, oh, defend yourselves, like, you can do this. And he's like, don't use your guns, use your... He said shovels, but it didn't seem... I think, like, one person had a shovel and everybody else had either nothing or handguns. So it was just crazy. I was like, this is a terrible idea. And, of course, Morgan steps in and then everyone else steps in. And he definitely called Rick out on it. And he was right. He's like, you said you don't take risks. And that was 100% risk. Especially because there were, like, 10 zombies, almost a dozen zombies, and it's like these four or five people who clearly aren't prepared might take out the very first one because the guy at least had his knife out, and that was it. Like, they probably would have got the first one and then all had been eaten. And Morgan definitely made the right call. I would have done the same thing. Like, I don't care where Rick is mentally, which is obviously, super tough love. Like, basically die or don't. So I would have made the same call, to be totally honest. And Rick is obviously, he's been going down this insane road the whole series, and that's what this whole season's about. And I was also something really good during the scene with Eugene when they had the gun on him. When Rick did take the gun back, we got the scene from the trailer, which I thought for sure was him talking to Morgan, like mid-season or something, when they finally end up having a crazy bout. But it was really early on. It was kind of insignificant, unfortunately. I think it could have been more if it was against, like, someone who had a bit more sway in the within Alexandria. Like, if it was actually Deanna, which he wouldn't say that to her, but if it was her or if it was Morgan, would have had more of an impact. But it still did have an impact because he said it in front of enough people to where it was like, okay, obviously, you have Morgan, Daryl, and Eugene who are totally on his side. Then you have the guy who has a gun to his head. And then you have like four other people who weren't listening to him, but they were still in the conversation. And they still hear everything Rick's saying, where it's like, basically, you can't take this from me, is how he put that. And other people heard him say that, and they're on his side for now. But things are going to get pretty crazy. But I like this premiere. I'm looking forward to this next episode where we basically get the other end of the spectrum as everyone's running back to Alexandria, and we get, it's probably only like a dozen people, maybe, that are actually still there. It's probably way more than that because there were only like a dozen people on the mission. So it's probably way more than that. But we'll get our, obviously, important characters having to fight back against all of these zombies coming in, and we might get an answer to who actually set off the horn. I highly doubt it was Gabriel. That would suck if it was him, though, just because he was mad, which I love that scene, too. And he's like, I'll help, and it was just like, no, anybody else. It was just like, dang, he didn't even bother with acknowledging that, but it was definitely enjoyable. I like that scene. It was pretty funny. Looking forward to the second episode, like I said. Of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this premiere, though, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and I want to know what you guys think about kind of Rick's decision, specifically him trying to let the people fend for themselves and him knifing the guy at the end of the episode. Because those were obviously two really big moments where it's like Morgan had to see those situations and look at this guy and really decide, is this truly the guy that I know? So I love those scenes. I would have done what Rick did. I probably wouldn't have just stabbed the guy. I probably would have kept trying to calm him down before stabbing him. I probably wouldn't have stabbed him in general, even though I knew he'd be turning anyway. But I don't think I would have stabbed him that way. And like I said already, I would have stepped in just like Morgan did. There's no way. Like, those people clearly weren't prepared. I would have done the exact same thing. Like, 5 dead people, not worth this minuscule lesson, honestly. So that's how I feel. But I want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below, let me know. And thanks for watching.